morning. It's Jenna from Chug On Coffee, and when I wake up, I tune into Good Morning Aurora.
Rise and shine. Pour yourself a cup of coffee and tune in to Good Morning Aurora. News, weather, and really cool interviews. Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is now 8:11 a.m. and you are listening to Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. And we are joined today by Dr. Vincent Gaddis. Looking forward to a great interview with this gentleman today. Hey, claps for the brother. Claps for the brother. All right, before we get into the interview, folks, we've got some news to tell you guys about and a word from our sponsors as well. Now, it came across the desk, and I want you to pay attention, folks. I've told you that hunger and fighting hunger in the community is a very important thing. And to that end, our friends of Talented 10th, On Us, and the Lewis Simmons Foundation are hosting Neighbors Giving starting at noon on the 26th, which is this Thursday, giving away pre-packaged meals until they're gone. We've posted this on our Facebook and our Instagram. For more details, visit our Facebook and Instagram. That's how you get the news, y'all. That's how you get the news. Check it out there, and please participate if you can. If you know someone who needs food or help, please refer them to Talented 10th. This week, the Aurora City Council is voting on a special use permit that would make way for a free healthcare clinic on the east side. Let me massacre the Spanish for all my listeners this morning. Iglesia Carismática Jesus Christos es la Verdad Church, located at 551 South 4th Street, is being reviewed by the Aurora Christian Healthcare as a location for their not-for-profit. VP Tracy Dunn cited a recent Kane County Health Department survey that showed that there are roughly 63,000 people in Kane County without health care. The special use permit is on the consent agenda for the council's meeting, meaning it's likely to pass, and that's this evening, as a matter of fact. The Aurora Area Retired Teachers Association, better known as ARTA, is holding their second drive-through box dinner sale from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Tuesday, December 1st. The public is invited. The cost is $20. We've been telling you guys about that for quite a while, so I want to see you there. Now, here's the menu. Listen to this. Greek chicken, roast pork, and fettuccine alfredo. Side dishes included are roast potatoes, green beans, and dessert. Shout out to ARTA, founded in 1958, for community service projects, including scholarships to local high school students planning to become teachers. Very cool. The gazebo at Millennium and Mundy Park, the gazebo at Millennium and the Star at Mundy Park will be staged for free holiday photos Saturday, November 28th and December 5th from noon to 3. Photographers are going to socially distance and wear masks. Photos are first come, first served, and will be available for download. Several locations will offer scenic backgrounds with Aurora Express, a downtown-wide holiday window theme featuring trains and other modes of transportation from yesteryear to today, in full effect throughout the season. Shout out to Aurora Downtown. Visit them at auroradowntown.org. Saturday the 19th of December, Faith Lutheran Church will be hosting their annual church nativity scene. During the performance, visitors will be invited to join the choir and sing traditional carols. After the performance, hot chocolate and cookies will be served, and a petting zoo will be open. How are they going to do the animals in the cold? I don't know. That's none of my business. Guests are invited to take their own nativity scene pictures. The public is invited. Admission, parking, and refreshments are free. And the weather for today is snow. A nice, light dusting of snow. It is a little bit warm outside. It feels kind of good, but as our guest mentioned to us, it's only going to really be pretty up until about 4 o'clock today. Then it's going to be that nasty, slushy, you know what it looks like, the brown ice kind of thing. That's not fresh. So anyway, thank you for the snow, but it can go whenever it would like to. And then there's thunderstorms in the forecast for Thanksgiving. And now a word from our sponsors, LDJ Cleaning Professionals, specializing in commercial, residential, and disinfectant cleaning. Serving Aurora and the Quad Counties with over 20 years experience in the professional cleaning industry, they offer their famous Make Ready service, post-construction cleaning, window cleaning, floor maintenance, disinfectant cleaning, and general office cleaning. The home that you worked so hard to purchase, the business that you dreamed of owning. They're honored to provide their service to you. Hire a true professional. Call them today at 630-291-5435 or visit their website at www.ldjcleaning.com. There to help protect your investment. Very cool stuff. And also, I want to say that the Aurora police have caught and charged an individual with an overnight with a shooting over the weekend. He has been swiftly caught 6 hours after the crime. Shout out to the Aurora Police Department. And the Civilian Review Board is up for discussion today at the City Council meeting. Please tune into that. I believe that's 6:30 p.m. 6:30 p.m. and that'll be live on Zoom on the City of Aurora's Facebook page. If you are not familiar with the Civilian Review Board, you should please tune in and educate yourself on that. That's a very significant and special initiative going on to build and restore trust between the citizenry and the police. You've heard us say many times on this show that during the tragedy of Henry Pratt, we were united. However, we are now divided. How can we get back to that point of unity? Tune in to the City of Aurora's Facebook page to discuss the Civilian Review Board this evening. And that is the news. All right. So now we get into our interview with Dr. Gaddis. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Glad to have you on the show. So we talked a little bit before the show about a whole bunch of good stuff, including coffee. That was a great spirited discussion, and I've got mine, and I loved it.
Yes.
So we'll have to do another section on coffee so you can educate the folks like you just did to us. That was that was very cool.
Would love to.
So for the listeners, introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're from.
Well, my name is Dr. Vincent Gaddis, and I live in Aurora. I'm not born and raised.
Okay.
I moved here in 1989. So I have been here for a long time, about 30 years, I guess. Is that 30 years? Yeah, about 30 years.
About 30, yeah.
And I went to graduate school at Northern Illinois University, but I'm originally, much like Bob, a vagabond, right? My father was the first African-American management trainee west of the Mississippi River for AT&T.
Wow.
And so at that time with AT&T, so I was born in Denver. And then the way it worked for AT&T was every 2 years you were up for a promotion. Now their loyalty to you was that you were up for a promotion if you did a good job.
Right.
Your loyalty to them was you were willing to relocate. And so I moved about every 2 or 3 years my entire life, from Denver to San Francisco, Kansas City, San Jose, and then wound up in New Jersey at the end of his career. Went to Rutgers University.
Okay.
Then I joined the military. I was in the U.S. Army, 101st Airborne.
All right.
Infantry, and then got out, did some sales, a bunch of other stuff. Decided that my whole life, everybody had been telling me, you know, you'd make a really good teacher. And of course, my entire life up to then, I'd been saying, they don't make any money. I don't want to do that. And then I finally realized that that up until that point in my life, all I've really done is read history books. So why don't I just do that?
Right. And
I found out that God's given me a gift to teach. Went to NIU, got my PhD, and have been at Benedictine University teaching full-time for 25 years.
All right.
And today I chair the Department of History, Philosophy, and Theology, although I do not have PhDs in all of those areas. But I also serve as an associate pastor at River Valley Community Church.
Okay.
I'm the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee for DuPage NAACP. I also work with Northern Illinois Jobs with Justice, Fox Valley Citizens for Peace and Justice. Hi, Mary. Mary Shesgreen is the key organizer for all of those groups. I'm a member of the Fox Valley Christian Ministerial Alliance. Shout out to Peggy Hicks, our president, Dr. Peggy Hicks,
don't forget
president.
The doctor.
She just got her PhD in community psychology this year, so I'm so proud of her because she decided that at this point in her career, even though she is not, got to be careful here, even though she's not as young as she used to be, you're still young at heart.
I like how you stepped around that landmine, brother.
Thank you. She decided, I'm going to go get my PhD, and she did it. And I'm just so proud of her. So that's a little bit about me. Oh, and I'm married. I have a beautiful, amazing wife, Kathy. I have 2 great sons, Clinton and Lewis. They're both married to 2 beautiful women. Lewis is married to Jamie. Clinton's married to Jasmine.
Checking all the boxes.
I'm checking them all. And Lewis and Jamie have 3 beautiful children, Gray, Lewis, and Isaac.
So tell you what, for being the first person to remember every family member's name, you get that, brother.
At this early in the morning, that's an achievement.
Yes, it is. Growing up, what impact did your mom have in your life?
What impacted, I'm sorry?
What impact did your mom have in your life?
Impacted my...
Life.
Oh, goodness. I think I think one of the most significant things that impacted me as a young person was really the idea that if you want to get along in this world, you have to know how to create relationships. Because I moved around everywhere, I was always the new kid.
Right.
I was always the outsider kid. He just moved here from who the heck knows where kid.
Right.
And so if I wanted to, and so I had to learn how to be sociable, how to build relationships and maintain those relationships. And I think I've done a pretty decent job at that. That was probably the most impactful thing as a young person growing up, was just the fact that I'm a transplant, right? And learning how to negotiate social, political, racial boundaries,
right?
And recognize how to be, have solidarity with African Americans, but also be able to create relationships outside of that community. So,
and Benedictine University, for those who don't know, is that Lyle?
Lyle.
That is Lyle. Okay,
yes.
Right. So if you're in Naperville, if you take Chicago Avenue East, yep,
yes,
turns into Lyle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great place. Great school.
I love it. It's I often tell people that I am not Catholic, but I am Benedictine. Because I do believe in the Benedictine values of hospitality, balance. Well, I don't live in balance, but I believe in it. Right? I mean, right, for me, balance is do whatever you're doing 100%, and
right.
then, okay, and then you can sleep later, right?
Right.
So that's not necessarily balance, but I do believe primarily in the idea of hospitality, the dignity of labor, the value of community, conversatio, conversion, right? Transformation. We're always learning, always developing, always changing as human beings. Love for God, love for your fellow man. So yeah, so I am Benedictine. I'm not Catholic.
What do you love about history?
Oh my. This is going to be, I like you. This is, well, I'm going to tell you, what I love about history is this. We, as people, we always think it's never been like this. Well, we've never been here before. this is, you know, either the best or the worst that it's ever been.
Right.
And the truth about history is that it is about change over time. And yet we do see periods in history where we can say, you know what, it's been like this before. Right. And in some cases, maybe even a little worse than it is right now. You know, and there are periods we can say, you know, it's been better than it is right now.
Right.
So we have things to strive for. And history is not linear. I don't believe history is linear. I don't believe in historical determinism. But I do recognize that as human beings, as a species, we tend to grapple with some of the same issues throughout time, right? Every generation has to decide about issues of power, issues of conflict, issues of solidarity. Every generation, every society has to decide how is it going to exist alongside of its neighbors. Right. What are the relationships there? How will it determine its economic plan or destiny? How will it evolve politically? All of those things happen over time in multiple civilizations, and it is not necessarily this sort of we started here and we end here. We started here and we kind of go like this, you know, and we got to figure out where are we at in all of that craziness, right? And so that's what I really love about history. I would point to a great historian, John Meacham, has a new documentary out. Yeah, he's got a new documentary out, The Soul of America, which really makes that point in a very bold way that, you know, this isn't the first time America's been fractured. Sure. This isn't the first time America's been deeply divided along the issues of race or class. Sure. The question for our time, for our generation, is how are we going to deal with it? Do we deal with it in the way that the secessionists dealt with it in the mid-19th century and we have a civil war? Do we deal with it by dialogue and recognizing our differences and trying to find some kind of common ground to build a future on? Right. What do we do? You know, how are we going to decide those issues? And that's the great thing about history. You can go back in time and say, well, okay, how did these people handle it? How did this civilization handle it? And draw lessons for your own time.
Does technology in the age that we live in, with the ability to Google anything that we choose, is technology augmenting, or is it taking away from historical experience and learning?
It depends if you're doing it in class by my instruction or not. Right? Because you have, right, here's part of the problem. There, like everything, there's pros and cons, right? So what social media and electronics and technologies allowed us to do is to democratize information. I mean, when I was a kid...
Never heard it put like that before.
Right, when I was a kid, you had 2, 5, 7, 9, 11... And if you had that little clicky dial on the bottom, you could get the UHF channels, right? Okay, everything went off at midnight. You know, on Saturday night, the TV stayed on till like 2 a.m. You know, you could watch creature features, right? And that was, you could go to the library and read a book. But that, you could read a newspaper. But that was really information, right? Now, I can have my phone and I can decide what news I'm going to listen to, what commentators I'm going to listen to, what area of the world, if any, I want to focus on, I can decide when I want my news, how I want information. I can Google or YouTube whatever I believe is information and then use that to augment my own perspective.
Right.
That is also the problematic part of democratizing information.
Sure.
I mean, right now you've got a lot of people who are QAnon and all of these other conspiracies and everything else. And so people have decided, the culture has decided that in this sort of postmodern relativistic place that we're in, right, highly self-referential, that all information is equally valid. And that's not true.
At all.
And that's where we are right now. So you can, so people can say, oh, well, this particular political party are mass pedophiles who eat children. And believe it.
And expect to be believed simply because it's information.
Right.
And all information is valid.
Exactly. Right. I mean, I was stunned how popular it is for people to believe that the earth is flat. Okay? Now here's so when we talk about, and I talk about this with my students all the time, if you want to talk about information, yeah, there's tons of information out there. But if you can't cross-list it, validate it, cross-check it, check it with a tier 1 peer-reviewed academic journal, find different authors within those different fields who commentate on whatever it is and legitimately corroborate it, then it's information, but it's not facts. And where we are right now, I just did an interview the other day about, Obama mentioned this in his interview on 60 Minutes the other day, and it's part of this whole postmodern problem of truth decay, right? Because if you live in a highly self-referential postmodern age, then my personal experience, my personal existence trumps, excuse my language,
sure,
trumps legitimate, observable, objective facts.
Of course.
And now we can't agree that the earth is round.
Right.
So where are you going to go from there if you can't agree that Joe Biden won the election? Where do you go if you can't agree that race is a fundamental issue in this country that must be solved? And because we've got people completely diverged into their own little realm, echo chamber,
yeah,
then how do you get them into a conversation about how do we transform the world to make it better?
The rebuttal that comes about most frequently is, well, I don't believe.
Yes.
Or it doesn't feel like it's, and that's, it's not a matter of belief or feelings when one is dealing with facts. And to your point, where are the citations in the book? What other work has been cross-examined?
Right.
Yes.
Right. We think research is, I looked up conspiracy theory on YouTube and watched some videos and now I'm an expert. Right? Rather than going through the legitimate, difficult research that it takes to mine real facts and create a narrative that is corroborated based on legitimate sources, research through academic tier 1 journals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, for example, the other day, someone posted on my Facebook, which is a whole other discussion, but somebody posted on my Facebook and said, you know, here's this person who is saying that, for example, that Donald Trump won the election in a landslide, there's massive fraud, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, all right. So I shot back and said, well, right now, there have been 23 lawsuits, and all 23 of them have been thrown out because the judges have said there is no evidence. So
why do you persist?
Where's your evidence?
Yeah.
Why are you saying this? What's the evidence? And the response I got back was, well, I just don't believe what you're saying. Well, okay, well, it doesn't matter what I believe.
How frustrating for a professor to hear.
It matters right? It matters what is observable evidence, right?
And what do you know that a judge doesn't know?
Exactly. Exactly. And so this is the issue where we are with technology and everything else, because it allows us to, whatever our political or economic or social or cultural identity that we've decided we have, we can now find an echo chamber of information and live there. And we don't have to come out.
Right.
And because we don't have to come out, when we do engage with people who don't think the same way, our response is just sort of, oh, well, they're stupid. They don't believe what we believe, so therefore, you know. And that's truth decay, right? 2 + 2 is 4. No matter where you go,
right,
no matter what race you are, 2 + 2 is 4. And if we can't agree on that, how do you create a dialogue for transformation?
I worked with a man, my first job out the military was Edward Hospital. I got to know a good guy as a radiologist. Talking, having some beers out, hanging out one night. And I asked him, I said, in all of your time as a radiologist, how many cases of cancer have you seen caused by windmills? And he knew what I was getting. He said, look, man, I know what you're getting at. And I asked him, like, why would you as a professional, why would you sign on to that and continue? You know, why would you die on the hill of defense of that? So to your point of truth decay, I never heard it put like that, but that's very true, because I personally believe that the printed word stands the test of time.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement? That
is a fair statement, although I will quote a professor friend of mine, and this wraps back into your technology question. We live in a post-textual society.
We do.
Right? So we don't live in a society where you read the newspaper.
Yeah.
Where you get a book. I mean, an actual physical book.
Not a Kindle.
And not a Kindle. And read it. Where you go and search for that information. Now, part of this whole issue is that, you know, a lot of people who didn't have access now do, and that's good. But we have to be careful about the legitimacy of the information that we're getting.
Correct.
Right? And so in this sort of post-textual, truth decay, postmodern moment where all information is equally valid, and wherever I get my information means that it is valid, that puts us in a place where dialogue becomes difficult, right?
I think it was the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which is seen as the precursor to the Civil War. My question is, what was a more fracturing episode in American history? The Civil Rights Movement or the Civil War? And the leading up to the, you know, all the things that led up to the Civil War. I mean, the Civil Rights Movement was not a war, so.
Well, yes, it wasn't a war.
But you know what I meant, right?
Yes, I would say that the more fracturing moment was Bacon's Rebellion in 1675. Because in Bacon's Rebellion, you had these indentured servants who were supposed to get land and usually a suit of clothes and some money after working for someone, these plantation owners, for a certain number of years. Indentured servants.
Is this the period of sharecropping?
Oh, this is long before then.
Okay.
Long before then.
Okay.
This is before the American Revolution.
1675.
1675.
Excuse me.
Way back.
Excuse me.
Right? Now, a slave was much more expensive than an indentured servant. But in the rebellion, in Bacon's Rebellion, these indentured servants basically rose up against the colonial government.
Right.
And these plantation owners were like, this is really a problem. How do we do labor relations and exploit these indentured servants? Well, here's what we'll do. We'll give them marginal land out there west, and what we'll do is invest in slavery.
Right.
And that is really, so my point is that the real deep wound in this country, we ripped the scab off in the 1860s. We've ripped the scab off in the 1960s.
Okay.
OJ, we ripped the scab off. We ain't getting into that.
Right. Right. I understand what you mean by that, yes.
Rip the scab off.
Right.
Right? George Floyd has ripped the scab off the original wound, which is that this nation was founded on slavery and white supremacy.
Is racism...
So that's the real fissure. And we have never really fully dealt with that.
Right.
And so we come to places like the Civil War where that wound is so deep that the nation itself fractures.
Understood.
Right? The Civil Rights Movement, that the push for civil rights exposed that wound so deeply that you get, the civil rights workers killed in Mississippi, Emmett Till, Selma, the March Against Fear, the bombing of the 4 little girls in Birmingham, etc. So it rips the wound, the scab, off of a wound that's never really healed.
Is racism a human condition?
Absolutely. Racism is not something you see in the non-human world.
Right.
Right? Racism is a social construction. Right? And it's a social construction that exists to institutionalize white superiority. And and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
I have often said that, racism, or the belief that one group of people are inherently superior over another group of people by virtue of the color of their skin, is the lie at the center of the modern project. Because everything that has come from that is, look at our institutions, look at the Constitution, the 3/5 clause. The first federal law enforcement activity of this country was slave catching.
Right.
So the slavery, racial superiority, white supremacy, is really the lie at the center of the modern project, right? Because, whether you're talking about colonialism, imperialism, internal imperialism, right? The reservation system of Native Americans, the genocide of that population, all of that at the root is about
race.
Race. It's about white supremacy.
What is your favorite period in history to study, read about, learn about, not necessarily teach, but and not just limited to American history? Actually.
Yes, I would say that my favorite period of history is the post-World War II America, followed closely by really early, that transition of industrial supremacy, right?
Right.
So 1865 to the end of the Harlem Renaissance and the Great Depression. So sort of 1865 to the 1940s up to World War II.
Right.
My dissertation was on unemployment in the interwar period, which I find really fascinating. There, I mean, you've got what I would call the first sexual revolution in the early 20th century, right? The flappers, and
yes,
the it girl,
yes,
Clara Bow, and all of that going on, and really searching for or trying to manage and understand what does it mean to be an economic leader in the world. I completely agree with Joan Hoff Wilson that Herbert Hoover is a forgotten progressive. We really pound on him for his response to the Depression, as we should.
Yeah.
But he also was the first, as Secretary of Commerce under Warren Harding, to have the first conference, national conference, in the United States on the question of unemployment.
I did not know that.
Which was a new word, and this is this is what I get into in history is thematic things like this. For example, unemployment is a word that is created in the 1880s, but it doesn't become really widely used until the 1930s. The words most associated with people not working were words like idle. And that's a moral word.
Right.
Right? It has a connotation that the person who's unemployed is lazy, intentionally, right?
That's why they don't have a job.
Exactly. Not that they are the victim of an economic circumstance produced by capitalism. And this unemployment conference, 1921, we had the founding of the National Bureau of Economic Research and recent social trends and all of this stuff, and these academics and labor leaders and government people, they get together, they have this conference, and what comes out of it is the reality that unemployment is not a moral condition, it's an economic condition. Now, Hoover doesn't do anything with that from a policy perspective necessarily, but it builds the framework where in the New Deal we can have unemployment insurance, where we can say it's an economic condition, not a moral failing.
Right.
And we do this with words all the time. I'll throw one out to your viewers. All right, here we go, little thought exercise. All right, so I want you to say out loud the first thing that comes to your mind when I say this word. Here we go, ready? Welfare.
Problem.
That's fair. But the word welfare is in the preamble of the Constitution.
I didn't know that.
Provide for the general welfare. Provide for the general well-being of the people of this nation.
That's a third gem you dropped on me in 2 minutes, right? I don't know what the...
Right? And yet, right, so language is malleable.
Yes.
Meaning can change.
Yes.
So now when we say welfare, we think about, come on now, a black single mother with
the
4
ghetto,
kids
the projects.
living in the projects, right? When the reality of welfare are white single mothers living in Appalachia somewhere, right? Whites far outnumber blacks on welfare, but the face of welfare is black, right?
Correct.
So language is where is really my bailiwick, right? And this question about how does the meaning of words change over time, and the assumptions we bring into that language.
It's a good point. Yes, yes, it is. I'm reminded now of all of the. I'm reminded now of my discussion with Jamie Mosser, who won Kane County State's Attorney.
State's Attorney. Yes.
Speaking with her about the law, legalese, as it's known, why the law says this as opposed to that, and the what it conveys when you're reading it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that has a lot to do with it. And that perception of welfare has persisted, and it still persists to this day. It
is persistent right now. And you know, when we talk about incarceration, you know, that has had I don't want to get into this too long, but there's a whole history there. That's the other area I'm really reading a lot on right now, is policing, incarceration, etc. But there was a time, late 60s through the 70s, where there was a real movement to say that, you know, incarceration should be founded on rehabilitation. And starting with Reagan, that has completely shifted.
Right.
That incarceration is about punishment.
Right.
Right, and it really goes back to, in my mind, the terrible consequences of this on two levels is, number one, Discipline and Punish, a book written by Michael Foucault, right, who said that the problem with the modern prison is not that you are punishing the body, being drawn and quartered, right?
Right.
You did a crime, and the punishment is that your body is what is punished. Prison, according to him, and I believe this, prison punishes the soul.
Oh yeah.
Right? And then you add on to that Patterson's idea of social death, and you have a real problem, right? And so if a person gets out of prison, they're a felon, right? In 15 states you can't vote. It's hard to get a job,
right,
hard to get education, hard to find a place to live, and you carry that with you like a scarlet F, if you will,
right,
for the rest of your life, right? And it's really what Orlando Patterson would call, social death, right?
The time is now 8:53 a.m. and you are listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast, and this is one of my best episodes with Dr. Vincent Gaddis. Who was the greatest entertainer of the Harlem Renaissance period?
Well, now I didn't know I was going to get put on the spot with all.
Oh, you on the spot, brother.
All right, cool. The best entertainer. Does that include writers?
No.
Okay.
For this conversation, it does not.
Then
because
I'll go with Cab Calloway.
Wonderful man.
And his big band, which really was one of those moments where, I mean, look, this country has always embraced black entertainment.
Yes, they have.
Right, and not necessarily embraced black lives, but certainly tried to appropriate black culture.
Certainly.
Right. So I would go with Cab Calloway and the entire big band movement of the 20s. Yeah.
Great music.
Yes.
Absolutely fantastic music, performances, and really rich history. Writer. Best writer of that period.
In my mind, Du Bois. Du Bois, politically, one of the founders of the NAACP, founder of the Crisis magazine, writer of what I think is one of the most significant intellectual autobiographies, if you will, of the century. I would say it's definitely Du Bois, The Souls of Black Folk, 1903, which I know is earlier than the Renaissance, but its magnification extends into the Renaissance itself. And of course, Langston Hughes would probably be the other, great poet, I would say. Ralph Ellison. Zora Neale Hurston. There's quite a few. Claude McKay, Richard Wright. Certainly, I think Native Son is maybe my favorite novel of the period is Richard Wright, Native Son.
He also wrote Black Boy. Yeah. What does America mean to you?
America is not a place where we define what is an American by nationality. Right? The beauty of America is that America is defined by aspiration. Right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, we all know that Jefferson didn't include wide swaths of people in that statement.
Sure.
But what does it mean to be an American is the constant expansion and inclusion of who fits in that statement. That's what it means to be an American. And in my opinion, it means that racism is fundamentally un-American. Right? You cannot say all men are created equal, really believe that, and then make exclusions.
Certainly not.
Right? And so what is an American? What is freedom? Is about how inclusive can we be to that statement that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
What's Aurora's biggest strength?
Aurora's biggest strength, I think, is its diversity. I think Aurora's biggest strength is its resilience as a city. Its position economically,
right,
socially, culturally in Illinois, which I would hope that in the future we would really leverage that much more, right? I had always thought that demographically, right, we have to be honest, right? Aurora is, and I think the number is 46% Latino, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If I were doing downtown development or whatever in this city, I would say, you know what? Let's embrace a kind of Southwest theme of Aurora.
Right.
You know, I mean, let's have the best Mexican food in the country. Let's have other cultural items here, but let's thematically embrace that. I think we've lost other opportunities. We're the second largest city in, this is sort of not on your question of what's good, but
continue, please.
But we're the second largest city in Illinois. We don't have a Latino heritage museum. We don't have an African American history museum. We've said that our theme is that we want to embrace the arts, which I love that. I think that is right on the money. But how do you embrace the arts and not have more museums, and museums that are specifically geared to particular cultural forms in the city. Latinos, African Americans, the Aurora History Museum, Historical Society there needs to be a major investment with that. The history of this city is an incredible history. What is the name of that building over here? The Daughters of the Revolution.
The GAR.
Grand
Army of the Republic.
Yes, the Grand Army of the Republic building.
Shout out to Eric Pry.
That needs to be a major cultural, a major tourism destination. And we haven't really made those kind of investments. But I would love to see us do that. Right.
I think that'd be great. I think that'd be really good. So Thanksgiving's coming up.
Yep.
What's on the menu? What are you cooking? What's happening? What are you in charge of this year? Most families are in charge. You do the turkey. You do the.
Yeah. Vince is in charge of the eating. That's what I'm in charge of. I'm in charge of the eating. Well, my wife and I, we usually do get together with the broader family, but because of COVID this year, I'm going to grill some tri-tip.
Okay.
Got some marinated tri-tip from Reams, and I'm going to grill that up on Thursday. My wife's going to make some, one of her specialties, fried green beans, and we're going to have some sweet potato pie, and we're going to just sit home and enjoy the holiday, just the two of us.
Give thanks.
Give thanks.
What would your message be to the young African American population of America about age 15 to 18 right now? What do they need to be focusing on?
You need to keep in the fight for equality. You need to, we need to give serious consideration to reading and research. We have a lot of young people who, legitimately so, have questions about our institutions,
right.
Whether that's the police, the way government works, etc. I agree. But we also have to have young people who are smart, and they are smart, but I'm saying increase things like, what are you reading? Increase your activism on a nonviolent level. And I mean study nonviolence, because within that is a kernel of how we do transformation. I would say we have to get out of this idea that school or education, is somehow a waste of my time. And we need to double down on education, double down on saying I'm going to be a straight A student, regardless of the obstacles. That would be my advice right now.
What was your first job?
I was a paper boy. My first job, I was 11 years old, and I had a paper route. That was my first job.
You miss it?
Not one bit. We lived in New Jersey at the time, right?
This is the Jersey time.
Right.
Jersey
we lived in New Jersey, and so being a paper boy, right? We lived on this geographically on a ridge line, and so being a paper boy meant humping up some pretty significant little hills to get to the houses. So yeah, I'm good.
The show ends on a positive note.
Sure.
What is your message today for the people of Aurora to take with them going into Tuesday?
My message for Aurora going into tomorrow is that, you know what? We can all make tomorrow as wonderful as we want it to be. We can decide to come together and dialogue with people we don't know and show them love and transform our city. We can do that tomorrow morning. We can do it today. That would be my last message would be, go to studycirclesaurora.org and get involved in a citywide dialogue on the issue of race in this community. It's a critical dialogue, one that is happening right now. We just finished the first round of dialogues, and I would hope that everyone would sign up to either be a participant or a facilitator, because Aurora can be such a progressive city in terms of us coming together and dealing with these issues and forging a way forward. And that's part of what I love about this city.
On behalf of the second largest city's first daily news podcast, we want to say thank you for coming on to the show today. It was a great conversation.
Oh,
great
thank
conversation.
you, Curtis.
I learned a lot.
I loved it. Thank you.
Learned a lot on the show today. To the listeners, we hope that you guys have a blessed, safe, happy Thanksgiving holiday. Be blessed, be strong, be dedicated today. And we'll see you guys all here tomorrow morning for another good show. Peace.